Hi, I'm Matt from HockeyReviews.ca, and this is the CCM Eflex 5 Pro. I don't know why this has a Pro on here. All the other CCM gear for Eflex 5 doesn't, but for some reason the chest does. So this is a CCM Eflex 5 Pro, or whatever they want to call it, chest protector snapshot review. So before we begin, I want to make some things really clear. This is a set I bought from a store. I can't do any protection tests with it. I can't do on ice tests. I can't test it with the Boney. I can't even test it with the mini sticks because I paid full pop for this, which was like $699 Canadian plus tax. And I want to return it because I am not keeping this chest. I just want to make a video on it. I want to talk about it because I thought it was pretty interesting. So I can't do any of that stuff in case it looks used and I don't want to scrape it up or anything like that. So full disclosure right there. Now with that said, I do have it later on in the video, the net coverage and the VH coverage, as well as the helmet chest protector kind of motion part and how it gets in the way. So that will be later on in this video, but we'll go over all the features on this thing and we'll really take a close look at it. Basically everything on here. I think this is a really interesting chest protector. I like a lot of things that CCM has done with it, and I wanted to talk about it because I liked the axis. I thought they did a lot of good stuff with the axis, and I'm a pretty big fan of a lot of the changes and stuff that they did here as well. If you want to see me make more content with actual tests, like protection tests, I have that Boney puck machine. I'm going to be doing protection tests on any chest protector I can get my hands on and use, as well as the catch and glove series, stuff like that. If you want to see actual practical tests, please reach out to the companies. So in this case, let them know you want to see me do actual tests with it, with my setup, and do videos on it. I'm not asking for custom and free gear from these companies. Every company like CCM has demo fleets of their gear that go around, reps go around, and people get to try their stuff out at demo days, and they have it for stores. I know for a fact CCM has a demo fleet with this chest protector in it, especially in Ontario where I am. It's very popular. Toronto's here, we're massive. So it would be greatly appreciated if you reach out to CCM and mention that. Like I said, I don't want free gear and to shill out like that. I would be happy to use a demo fleet, do some videos on it, do some tests on it, give some feedback on it, and then happily return it on my own dime. Otherwise, if you want more content like this, please help support the channel. If you live in the United States, check out the link in the description too. Pure Hockey and Pure Goalie. Clicking that link, making a purchase, gives me a kickback, which I will put right back into the channel to keep making more content. Otherwise, if you want to support the channel another way, and you can be from anywhere in the world in that case, check out the link in the description to Patreon and buy me a coffee. Everything that goes through there will come right back into this channel so I can keep making content. If I want to do the actual tests of stuff, I basically have to buy all the gear myself. That's very expensive. It would be greatly appreciated to assist in that. Now, I haven't even put on the CCM Shield before, so I can't compare this to the Shield at all. I apologize for that. When that came out, I wasn't looking for a new chest protector, so I wasn't really looking at that model, never really did. So this is going to be a fresh take for me on this. Now, this means absolutely nothing, but I really love the little details on this little floater right here, and you can see it, Eflex 5, Max Flex Fit, D3O molded, just all the little tech features throughout it. It doesn't mean anything, it's just a kind of cool little feature. CCM's doing that on their Player 6 now, and it's a kind of an awesome little thing. This line is supposed to be the more flexible one and slightly, I guess, less protective and less coverage. It still feels pretty big when I wear it. It still feels like it does a pretty good job of covering things. It is very flexible when I wear it, but we'll talk about that at a separate section. The one thing that CCM is talking about on this is they're not using composites, and they're instead using something called Zote foam. Zote foam was originally on CCM player gloves, the QLTs, I think. It did a decent job for protection, but it had plastic assisted in doing a good job for protection. This doesn't. This is just foam. This is just foam. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. Floaters, the actual chest of this design is pretty cool. We'll show it when you flip it over. The floaters are pretty good in hinging and everything like that. And the way that this piece is sloped up, the floaters don't really get caught on it, so they really move around pretty good, which is a nice design. Overall, the body's like decently long. This stuff's like all pretty standard. You don't really have any hard plastics here. You do have some vented foams right here, as you can see. So that should help with breathing a little bit down there. And that is going to be covered mostly by your pants as well. So that's kind of nice to have some breathability down there so it doesn't make everything super, super hot. Regardless, we have their D3O piece right here. So I can't tell if this D3O actually goes all the way down here or not. It does look like it goes under the black foam that's kind of underneath there. Hopefully this is getting off on camera. But you can kind of see the layers on here. It does look like it goes under there, which would be nice if they did include it all the way through. The one thing I'm going to say though is CCM advertises D3O on this kind of heart guard piece as shot deadening, and I really think if they wanted to make this really shot deadening with D3O, it would be on the outside, not deeper layered. So you can see how it's layered in there and it's really regressed back there. And what I mean by that is, so D3O, when it gets hit by something hard, it becomes harder and then things kind of stick to it instead of bouncing off. While it's a great idea and you've seen it work in all their demo things, if they wanted to make this more predictable rebounds and so they weren't bigger, but D3O should be on the outside of this, because if a puck hits anywhere here, this is a really hard foam and it doesn't compress much, as you can see by me kind of pushing in on it. So the rebounds are still going to be bigger than if they were with D3O on the outside. So if this was purely as a protection standpoint, then being down below is fine. But with them saying that this is kind of a shock absorption, I saw this on their marketing partners that should really be on the outside, and that way that would do a better job of deadening those rebounds. Now D3O is a really expensive material compared to other stuff used on this. D3O being after like a third-party licensed material costs more than using other foams. So I'm a little bit curious to see how much is actually used here. A lot more of it would be useful, but it is, like I said, really expensive. So you kind of have to like watch what you do with it. Personally, this whole piece should basically be a pretty thick piece of D3O, but cost, it would be really expensive for them. So I kind of get why it isn't. But if this is marketed for rebound, like better rebound control, it really should be on the outside. Now, just as a comparison thing, this is a sheet of D3O and it is pretty thin. I can't remember exactly how thick this is and how big this was, but this sheet cost me about $40. Now, CCM being a partner would obviously get that less than what I paid for this thing. I bought this as I was gonna cut pieces up and use it for different protective pieces or add it to pieces that I want it to be more protective. I haven't done that yet, but CCM would obviously get a better cost for this, but this is an expensive material compared to a normal foam. So I want to call that out there and just kind of make it known. CCM has added D3O in the shoulder pieces as well, basically right here, and you can see it right there. And it does look really thick, as you can also see, but it's a little misleading because while it is kind of thick, it does have a black piece underneath too that makes it stick up a little bit more. I'm not saying they're being misleading on this and making you think that this is all D3O all the way through here to add really that extra protection. They might just be pushing it out to the surface or adding that dual density of layer there, but there is a foam underneath, a black foam that's rising this up. So you can see how thick that is. So I'm always happy when companies are using smart foam and stuff like that right here. It's like I said, it's an expensive material and they could just have not used a foam there. So it's nice that they're adding it in places. I do wish it was up a little higher as well, kind of up on here, just for that top piece right there. Cause you do have this big shoulder floater, like the thickest part basically right there. And that way it would cover about like those shrugging shots, but it's a nice addition there and it's better than not having it. So I guess props to them there. Again, this doesn't have a plastic in it. And really having that plastic plate here would do more for protection wise than what this D3O would do. But plastic is heavier than what this little piece would be all the way through. Plastic as well can break and crack and stuff like that, where these foams are probably a little bit more durable in that sense. But that would definitely give you more protection than what this piece will do here if this was a plastic plate through it. The floaters are an okay thickness. Like I said, there's not super hard foam here, so it is pretty flexible. Protection wise, I can't test it, so I can't really comment about it, unfortunately, but that's where we're at. And then finally, right on when we go to the face, we have the adjustable wings, but we'll talk about that at the back. And we have this kind of wing piece right here. And you do see another spot where they could have added D3O right under here just for that extra protection, but they don't. And it is just a harder foam right there instead of that D3O layered foam. But you have this cap as well, which does have a little bit of flexibility there for your arms. So your arms can bend it a little bit like that, as you can see. It's fine design here, nothing crazy, nothing special. I still would have liked to see CCM using their U-foam, I think it's called U-foam Plus or whatever, that they use on player gear for so much. Right here, it's a molded foam that they use on their shoulder caps. That seems like this would be a perfect spot for it. Maybe it's not dense enough, but it definitely seems like it's a spot that it could definitely be utilized. This piece in here though is a very, very dense foam, almost to the point where I thought it was plastic, but it definitely isn't plastic because it does feel like it's either a single layer or it's just a really, really dense multi-layer in there. So maybe the U-foam would be too soft for that and not quite protective enough, but I still would have liked to see on utilized somewhere, and it's really not at all here. Like I said, they're using that Zope foam, but U-foam is a molded foam that's kind of supposed to be exposed, and this really is kind of inside, so it's a little bit different application. For connection points and tie downs, you have the pant tie down right at the front right there, as you can see, and then it does have these loops right here. I'm not sure if these are to loop into pants or not. I haven't seen anything on it. I haven't been able to find anything on it. It would be useful for suspenders though, if you wanted to pull those suspenders through there. It might pull it to the side a little bit on there on the shoulder floater, but it's an interesting little idea there. The other thing that's kind of interesting on the side here is this clip. So it does have a normal plastic buckle right there, but does have this covering right here. As you can see, the idea, I guess, of that is so this doesn't break by getting hit with pucks, as it does sit pretty exposed. It's a nice touch, but I still feel like a lot of companies are just basically putting this under a piece of foam or kind of like in between here. And I would have probably preferred to see that over this. I don't know what the testing was done on this. I'm sure CCM has put it through a ton of testing, but I'm really curious to see how well this is going to hold up, because it is like, it does feel like a plastic, and you can see it flexes like that, but I'm not sure how long that will hold up, especially when cold and getting impacted by pucks. And I don't know how much that's going to actually stop this plastic underneath from breaking. Interesting idea. I still would have preferred to see like this flap come out over here. It's not a huge thing to do, and it probably would have been more durable in the long run. The other piece on the side, and CCM has had this for a bit, is this removable rib protection. So you can see it labeled down here. Basically what this does, Velcro's out right here and on the side and on the bottom. So you get a little bit extra protection on the sides here. This is a pretty thin foam, as you can see, and it is perforated, so you will get some decent breathability there, but that also sacrifices a little bit of protection that way. But it's fine because it is like that extra layer on the inside if you want a little bit more protection and a little bit less closer fit, because if you did take that out, this would wrap a little bit better, but this doesn't push out nearly as much as the Optic 2 one did. So they had that pillow there. So this is a much nicer to use than that one was so far from my experience of wearing this. One last place that I kind of forgot is the neck area. So a lot of people see CCM chests and think that they sit really low, and they kind of do if people don't adjust them properly. This one sits fine for me. The neck piece isn't like anything special. It's pretty flat. It's fine. It's nothing like a built-in guard or anything like that. It's just a little flap to give you a little bit of protection from pucks kind of ramping up and like that, but it doesn't replace a neck guard at all. And I always still suggest people going that neck guard route. So next we look at the back plate and kind of the inside part of it. So we'll talk about the back plate part really quick. I really like the design on this. It feels really lightweight, and it's also super flexible, as you can see. So it is that perforated foam that you saw on the rib protection, and it is all throughout the back here, which means this is going to breathe pretty good on the back. I have a really sweaty back when I wear my brown chest protector, and this would be a godsend for that. Obviously you're not looking for protection back here, but this is a nice like breathable piece that I'm a huge fan of. The chest height is pretty standard for CCM. They've had this a while. You Velcro it that way, and you can adjust up and down. So I like to adjust it pretty far back because I'm not really looking for the extra height. Rather, I'm looking to pull this piece up. So when you do adjust these back, that front piece obviously pulls up and it doesn't sit as low. I don't like my chest sitting that low. I like them kind of tight to my body, and that way, like, it doesn't move at all. When I go in my crouch and stuff, it kind of just stays there. I know a lot of people like to let it hang, and then when they go in their crouch, it slides up. For me, I like it to kind of stay where it is, and that's why I would pull those up. The wing adjustment, obviously you can pull it back to be a little bit tighter and to open up, and you can adjust it open close just like that. It's pretty nice changeable design. It's one of the more adjustable ones on the market. Vaughn has a pretty good one with their new wings, but this is a pretty good adjustable design. CCM deserves credit for that because they've been doing it for a while as well. The inside of this is just an air mesh, nothing crazy here, like no fancy dry materials or anything. I would have liked to see CCM use like the liners that they use on their player gear. So they had like this red thing for a while, I believe, or in their gloves, one of those like moisture wicking or moisture evaporating liners. They don't do that at all here. There's no polygene, which CCM's now using on player gloves or has in the past. There's nothing of that on here. It's just nylons. So that would have been a nice thing to see, but it's not a major thing. Like I said, this will be pretty breathable because it has that perforation through it, but it would have been kind of nice to see that as well on here. The buckles are these massive, massive buckles, as you can see. Hopefully these will be durable. Again, can't comment on any of that stuff. The one thing I'm slightly disappointed on, and it's not a big thing at all, but I want to comment on it, is that this isn't one piece, so this is 2 straps. And the reason I'm slightly disappointed, if this just one piece all the way through, you would have been able to swap it out much easier if once these bacon out. Because they're sewn in here, it's gonna be slightly annoying. You're gonna basically have to cut it and either sew it back and put one piece all across, or do something else to it. So having that one piece would make it last longer, and so you could definitely modify it a little better. The other thing is, having it one piece, you can just adjust one side and you get the same tightness because it just slides. Versus this one, I adjusted this side to make it tighter, then I had to adjust this side, so it's not all pulling to one side and it's even. That's a nitpick, but it's something I think they could easily do that would make it better. Maybe having 2 straps here means that bacon's slower, and bacon is when all the elastic kind of bunches up and it stretches out. But that one piece would make it more modifiable, more replaceable, and you wouldn't have to adjust it as much. So I wish that was the case. Otherwise, we flop this open and we look at the body, and we can see that, again, perforated foams down there I mentioned. And this is the part that I find is really interesting on this chest. And something they did actually really good with the axis as well is they really allowed these pieces to float because of this design. So one thing is, you can see how all these blocks are like, it's blocked out and it's just not a flat piece. A lot of companies have done flat pieces, or they don't go to this detail of blocking all this out. With that said, this is the front piece. There is no inner pillow. Other companies do have inner pillows. This is the front piece itself. As you can see, it's right there, and it does come out where there is more padding. So there's this extra shield up here, which kind of rings around the side, as you can see, and then there is that front piece. So when we look at right here, you can see right here is the front piece, and then that shield that rings around the top up here. So the way that this connects, it acts like a 3-piece design, kind of similar to what the Axis was doing. So the connection points are right down here for the sides and onto the heart or the middle piece. And then up here for the neck, as you can see. And finally, we have like a mesh in between here holding these 2 pieces together, but that really allows them to kind of move like this. So when you squeeze your arms together, it's going to move in like that, which is a nice feature that's not like connected here, because this would kind of get in the way. So it moves around like that. Really nice design, especially because when you think of here, that's basically your breast area going to be going in and out with your arms going like this and moving around like that. So having this right there and move like that is a really good design by CCM, and I got to give them a lot of credit for that. It also does allow this piece to kind of move up and down, as you can see, whereas this was all one piece, these would not be able to really go up and down separately. But because this is the shoulder piece and around the neck area, this does allow it to move a little bit more independently with this, and just allows a little bit more range of motion. Very solid design and idea was for CCM there, and I got to give them credit for it. So something that's pretty interesting is you can see how the upper part here is like would be close to your body, and then it kind of slopes outwards. Now this works really well when you untuck the chest, so your pants are on the inside of this. When it's the other way, it doesn't really work that great, but it does work really, really well when this is untucked, because this part slits right over your pants, and then this part definitely comes up closer and sits closer to your chest. The arm Velcro adjustment is straightforward and standard, just like that. Simple, to the point. I like Bauer's version of this, but this one works as well. Bauer has that string, so I like that one, but this works as well and works fine, and no complaints or anything there. Does allow for a pretty decent range of movement there as well. You can really loosen that or really tighten it off. The arms are really interesting to me, and I like when I put on this chest and moved around in it, it felt really comfortable. So with that said, there are no plastics in here. So you see how you can bend this so easily, and it's a hard foam, but it's not a plastic foam. I can feel that going through my hand pretty good. I can't comment protection on this. Unfortunately, I can't do my tests on it. I would love to see how this is. This has the opportunity to be a very, very good chest protector, but I still think they're falling short in what this protection is, because I really don't think this foam is going to be enough. Now, CCM in their marketing partner said that they didn't use a composite here because of a rebound control, because this foam will allow for better rebound control. I always have a slight issue with that. You could just put a foam on the outside of that, which would deaden rebounds. And if CCM really wanted to deaden rebounds, D3O. You wrap that in D3O around it, and D3O is going to deaden rebounds more than just this. So D3O, a piece of plastic and then foam, would deaden rebounds more than what this design is. So I'm kind of I believe it's just a marketing thing and their reasoning for it being less protective than it really is. And also, this is a super light arm. This feels like you could put 4 of these for the weight of one of my Kineski arms and maybe 8 of these for a Brown arm. This thing's crazy light. It's so light, it's so mobile, but the mobility, it doesn't come because of this foam package. It's actually, the design is pretty good on it. So I'm gonna cover that in a little bit. But that just being a foam, as you can see, is a little disappointing to me. And it's not a super thick foam. As you can also see, it's just that right there. And then you do have a little bit of inner liner, but it's not really padded, it's just a liner. A lot of people say I'm a massive baby and I don't want to feel shots, and that's kind of true. I don't want to ever have to wince after taking any sort of shot. I just want it to hit and that's it. With this design, you wouldn't be sacrificing mobility because, as you can see, this moves really well, and it's more because of the way this is and the way the inside's built. You could still add that layer and it would be fine, but this is more of weight savings and cost savings that they did on this. The unfortunate truth of chest protectors at the retail market is you put this on someone, if it doesn't feel good right away, they basically hate it and you have to talk people into liking it. If this is a bit heavy and even a little bit less broken in, it's gonna be lost sales. It's just how it is. And this is an amazing movement, super lightweight, feels awesome on you, but it's just slightly disappointing to me. If they offered a custom program like Bauer does for all their stuff where you can get beefed up everything, perfect. I would probably try to buy one of these if that was the case, but they don't. They only really have this version. I know in the past companies have sold their own spec one. The Goalie Crease is a company I think that did that, where it was beefed up. I wish this was more a common thing. I haven't seen one of those yet for this chest. This floater design is really, really nice. So it does have this interesting material. It's like the same as the heart guard material, but the way that this floats and the way that this reacts with this piece, it's just really solid. Now there is a gap right here, and that gap goes all the way through the arm. So you can definitely feel this little exposed part here, and that gap, there is definitely no padding right there. So if you're really flat like this, there's definitely a gap in padding right there. So that's kind of disappointing, and that's a gap in your arm. So hopefully just the way your arm is shaped and the way your arm is bent like this, that gap kind of won't happen or pucks will hit around it. But I can definitely feel a gap through there, and that's kind of disappointing. Warrior does a really good job with this. Bauer does a very good job with their new floater, how it kind of just floats flat above. This one is super mobile, as you can see, but that does have a gap right there with zero protection all the way through on here. So a little disappointing there. I do really like this design and the idea behind it because it does have the strap, which allows you to loosen or tighten this piece. Obviously you tighten it and you're going to get less mobility because it doesn't move as much, but it comes pretty loose out of the box just like that. And it really does move well with the arm and with your movements. At the top, the padding does seem a little bit better than at the bottom, just because like up here is okay, but this is always going to be covered by your shoulder floater, so it's not that big of a deal. This piece isn't much bigger. If it is, it's just slightly bigger than what's at the bottom, but the pieces back here do feel slightly thicker, so you might get a little bit more padding in this. There's not a lot, but it just might be a little bit more than what's at the bottom. I do like the design, how it really covers everything well. It reminds me of their new NHL spec designs with how this works, which isn't a bad thing. I really want to try one of those chest protectors, but again, I'm just a little bit worried about the padding on this. One thing that CCM does really, really well, and they basically take what feels like they take from their player department, is their elbow pads in here. And as you can see, this is basically a player elbow pad. Like, look at the similarities between these. And this is a really solid design because it really locks your elbow in place here. As you can see, that cap is really designed there. And the way you sit in there, it has all these nice spandex straps for support and holding everything in place. It's a little awkward to get in, but when it's in there, it feels really great. And this is a really overall solid design. And CCM, I'm gonna say, is one of the better ones of these. Bauer's pretty decent at this too, but this is just awesome in how your arm sits in here and kind of floats around. And you can see like down here as well, that's basically a player elbow pad in there, and you do have a nice little donut for your elbow to sit on there. Really solid design. CCM deserves credit for it. So CCM did add this piece on both of the back of the arms. Basically that's so for like your catch and glove like this, a puck comes under, or blocker side too. There is some padding on the underside. And this is that interesting design that we first saw on the Axis, where it is that Velcro on the back. This is a little different because they have the Velcro here too. But I want to call this piece out because while I think this is a brilliant design and it feels really comfortable on like when you're wearing it and it wraps really well and it allows a little bit of a custom fit, it is so thin and it is so like empty for foams. That foam is so thin and basically completely useless that this isn't going to do anything. There's also like nothing on here either. There's no foam in here at all. It's just the nylon and then just the nylon on here, which connects to there. And then the rest is this super, super thin foam that really isn't going to do anything. And this is a great design and it could be a really good piece overall if CCM put something like D3O in there. Even this much of D3O would be considerably better than what is in here, but there's nothing in here. This should be thicker and should either be like something like D3O or just dense foam in there to actually act as protection, but it's not. And this is the case where CCM kind of feels like they do this a lot, where they could make something really good, but whether it be penny pinching to make sure they hit their margins or what, they just don't do this to the extent of what it should be, and it should be better. Great idea, kind of poor execution from a protection standpoint. Well, this does have the Velcro elastic like this, like more traditional chest protectors, unlike the Axis. It does have that awesome like spandex material on the inside, and it's super comfortable all the way around. I really like this design, but there are a few things on here that are kind of weird and don't really work that well. Number one is the actual size of the elastic piece itself. So this piece right here is clearly cut the same size as what this is under the binding, but the binding gets in the way. So when you actually do it up, some of it overhangs and it's not going to be full Velcro. Now you're gonna say, well, it doesn't really matter to hold it in place. That's fine. But when stuff overhangs like this, the Velcro is going to catch on things just like this. So the Velcro will catch on it, which is not ideal. If you really want this to connect, you have to go under the binding and actually put it there. So why don't you just make this smaller? Just cut off. I cut this half the size and then it would fit better. Or remove this binding and sew it the other way out. So this piece is on the other side. Maybe that would be too much rubbing because as you can see, this is a pretty like smooth seam right there. So I kind of understand why that's there. But this binding really gets in the way and it's a really weird annoyance of a design. The reason I kind of noticed this is I pulled the arm like as low as possible into my gloves to see where interference would be. And I noticed that when I didn't really do this up that tight, it didn't fit really tightly around my arm. So it felt kind of bulky and kind of like it would get in the way a bit. So what I tried to do was tighten this up all the way, as like tight as I could to make this as tight as possible. And this is basically what would happen. You can see it would overlap and this part would kind of stick out. So it didn't really work that well. There's a few ways that you could either fix it. You could have it in like a little slot. So stitch over little pieces right here so this stays in. Or because when you do this and make sure it's like kind of all in, you can see how it all bunches up. And you definitely notice that on the arms. It doesn't really make it as skinny as I wanted it to, because this piece does feel a little bit too bulky for going as deep as it really needs to. What some companies do, and like my brown does, is while I appreciate that this is almost a perfect circle right here, you really don't need from about here to here in terms of anything here. That's going to be in your glove, that's going to be in your cuff. That's not offering protection or anything right there. It's so thin anyways. So what they could have done is basically taken off this part and just made it part of this elastic, and then you'd have that gap. Because then when you tighten it, it would basically just come together like that in a perfect like circle, and there wouldn't be any bunch up or anything like that. And it would have been a nicer design instead of like there is that gap right there, but when you really tighten this all through, the whole thing just starts to bunch up. So it's kind of annoying in that sense. I found the most comfortable way for me to wear this was to be like as loose as possible like this. But again, this wasn't thin enough and basically tight enough where it didn't feel like it wasn't really a hindrance in the gloves. It was okay, but it could have been better. And that's a bit disappointing for my eyes. And a slightly disappointing thing here is this little strip, and this is a nitpick, but CCM does it so well everywhere else. I'm going to call it out where they don't. This could be a piece of rubber or something to cover this. Instead, it's just straight up Velcro. So when it does sit down, one, it's kind of, you try to pull this, it doesn't come out, you got to pull that. And that's annoying. And you can see because it's the connecting piece, it does get caught up on stuff, and I found it pulling up when getting caught up on stuff. CCM could have done something like this where at the very tip you put your little rubber piece right there. Now maybe there's a reason this rubber piece isn't on the arm piece, maybe it gets in the way or something, but it would have been nice. Or the other thing they could have done is just put like a little piece of Speedskin or Gen Pro slightly longer than this and let it to be a flat, and that way you pull up so it's not pulling up on here. Again, very small thing, but it is something and I want to call it up. So here is the coverage of the Eflex 5. This is again a size large, just like all the other ones. And here it is with the jersey on, so you can see what it looks like for here. The neck interference it's still there, but it's going to be there for everything. When you really lean in your stance, there's not a whole lot there, and it does a pretty good job. There's obviously a little interference with the dangler, but when you reach out, it does get much better, and you can flatten these shoulders a little bit with the adjustments, but these ones I'm pretty happy with where they were. And here is the RVH coverage. So here is the CCM Eflex 5 Pro chest and arm on me. Like I said, mobility on this, like I was talking about how much I love the arms, is really good. I also mentioned how great this part is for moving, and you can see like how much you can go over. You do get a little interference with this. It slides up, hits the arm, but that's like, you're never really going to do this. But when you're moving like this, it's all really good, and this moves. Like, you can't really feel it moving, but it has that ability to move, and it really does a good job of moving with your body and everything. So like I mentioned how good the arm mobility is, it really feels awesome when you're wearing it, and like the arms just feel fantastic. You can reach up really easy all the way through. The floaters and this cap kind of get in the way. If you adjust them a little better, it's easier to move, but normally you don't have the ability to adjust them, so you can see how they get stuck on the floater. But it is possible to get under the floater and move better, but I found that kind of happening, and then it pinches up here. But you're rarely going to do this, right? This is just for getting stuff on, so it's not an issue whatsoever, and mobility and everything is really good. So this side of my body does not have this piece in, so as you can see, and I'm guessing it's going to show up on the video. I can tell pretty easily when it's on, especially when I go like this. This part does feel like it sticks out considerably more, so that will be much better for kind of blockage and closing that gap right there, because it goes like that's, I can feel it there, and this one it's not touching yet, and that was basically the same movement. You can really feel that there, and that's going to make a huge difference. I saw one of CCM's social media partners say that padding thing isn't going to make any difference protection. It does. Even having this perforated foam right there just adds that little bit of layer of dampening, and it really does make a difference when I kind of hit on either or. So it does make a difference for protection, but it really depends on if you want that tighter fit or a little bit more pushed out. This isn't nearly as pushed out as the Optic 2, like I mentioned earlier, but when it's on, you really notice it doesn't feel awkward. It doesn't feel like it's kind of like sliding out of you. It feels pretty secure and pretty good there. For the glove interference, wearing the same gloves that I always do, very, very little interference at all, and only when I go really low and kind of wrap it around. You can't really hit that piece unless you really try. Normal movement, it's going to be totally fine. You really have to try to get in the way. Same with the catching glove, really good there. And at this position, it doesn't feel like it's pushing this glove down, which has been a problem with this glove. So here you can see where, like, how deep this goes, and it looks like it's a lot deeper than it is, because all of this area right here isn't actually protection, right? That's just that strap. So I feel like this is kind of where, if this was somehow put up here or was shortened significantly, you could get that protection down more. Because with this glove, if I'm out here, it is possible to hit that. I have got hit there in the past with Warrior gloves and this one and JRZ, because the cuffs aren't quite as long as some like the CCM ones or Bauer. That is a thing where it doesn't interfere at all, and it's fine, but doing something here could really make a nice difference. And same with the blocker, it looks like it goes pretty deep, but you can see how that cuff actually only really covers up to there, and that definitely could go deeper in there. I could adjust the arms down more, but doing that is really going to make this part interfere with the catching glove, and in reality it's going to make like that part interfere there. So I kind of wish it was almost tapered more at the top, so you do have a little bit more coverage. It's fine, but I just want to call that out. So I always tuck my chest protectors in, and this kind of shows off how much coverage and everything you get all over it, especially with it tucked in chest. It feels fine in there. Even with the padding in on the right side, it feels fine. It definitely does kind of get in the way more when I go like this, but it's fine, and I would probably wear it. But yeah, you definitely can feel a little bit more when it's tucked in. When we untuck the chest, and this is not how I wear my stuff, but I'll do it just because a lot of people wear their stuff this way. It does definitely feel more like this is how this chest is designed to be worn, is on the outside, to be totally honest. But this definitely does feel like it's designed for this more. When it's in, it doesn't get in the way, but it definitely feels like it wasn't the first priority. And you can kind of see how this part is sloped in the previous part of the video, like this chest piece is sloped. And this makes more sense when it's in like this, because the upper part slopes into my chest up here and this part slopes out, which makes this part fit very well for untucking. And basically it does help a little bit with that padding too, just having it puff out a little bit on top. Again, this is a personal preference thing. I like to tuck my chest in. This one would be tough for me just because I really feel like this doesn't move as well inside as it does outside, but I have to either get used to it or adjust something there. This piece not coming off does like kind of get in the way with that too. It's not a big thing at all. You could cut this off if you really want to, but it's fine. So one thing I do want to cover is just how low CCM chests hang. I like to wear them pretty tight up and tight to my body, so this one doesn't hang very low. And when you go in the crouch, it kind of moves up a little bit, but that is kind of how it is. I never have issues with that when playing or anything like that, but I just wanted to do a comparison. And oftentimes I see people wearing the chest a lot lower like this, basically because when they go in their crouch, you can see it moves up. I still think there's too much of a gap there, so it's not what I prefer, but it's definitely what some people prefer, and they like to hang that lower. I like mine nice up and tight so things don't move around as much, but some people like that, and you can see the difference. So that's about it of this CCM Eflex 5 Pro chest and arm snapshot review. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, this isn't my unit. I bought it from a store, but I'm going to return it to a store. And because I really want to talk about a lot of this thing, because I think CCM is doing some really awesome things here. Again, because it's not my unit, I can't do protection tests and I can't do like anything like that. I can only guess on the protection. I can't say if it's going to be good or not. I do comment on that because of what my past experiences are and how I know like foams like this stuff work. But without usage, it's just without usage, and it's just my experience. Now with that said, if you want to see more videos like this, and specifically videos of me using gear like this piece, reach out to the company on social media, let them know. I know CCM has a ton of demo sets of these, demo fleets basically, of where they do demo days for stores and like goalie clinics and stuff like that. I'm in Ontario. It's really popular. Toronto is in Ontario. There's demo stuff for this. I've asked. I don't get a response. So if you want to see me actually get one of these things behind a puck machine and talk about the protection and actual usage like that, let CCM know on Instagram, Twitter, send an email to their contact us form. That is basically the only way at this point, unless a store kind of helps me out, where I would be able to test this stuff, because I can't afford to buy all this stuff all the time. I spent over $700 just doing this video, and then I got to return it, hopefully get the money back. But I just want to be crystal clear about that and up front. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of things I'm impressed with this, but I'm a little bit hesitant on it. It's not something I would buy without some custom options of being able to be fit up. I like protection. I like stuff that I don't have to worry about feeling a shot that would hurt or anything like that. And I know that there's gear out there that you can move well enough in that you don't need something this light and this mobile, because adding the protection on this wouldn't change the mobility. It would just add weight, and that's not a huge issue. With that said, thank you very much for watching this video. Hopefully it was helpful. If you want to support this channel and live in the United States, check out the links in the description to Pure Hockey, Pure Goalie. Clicking that link, making a purchase gives me a kickback, so I keep doing videos and making more content. Otherwise, if you want to support the channel, check out the links to Patreon and buy me a coffee. Everything that goes through there comes right back in here, so I can do real tests and stuff like that. Fortunately, to do real tests, I gotta buy most of the gear, and that's really expensive. It is what it is. Thank you very much for watching, and take it easy.
You're watching HockeyReviews.ca.